Hello everybody, it's Mike Yao with Savage Kingdoms role-playing game and Fire in the Head Productions. So I thought today's video would be about going back to Savage Kingdoms like the last couple of videos. I was just kind of wandering on mountain trails, just trying to figure out how to do different content and stuff. Just to talk to you guys not only about game design, but just in general, right? But today, and I apologize, got some, my wife and I have some kind of crud. We're not sure what it is. It hasn't tested as flu or COVID, so it might be a new strain of something. So I will try not to cough, and hopefully I don't sound too terrible. But I'm stuck here at home, and so I thought I would just do a video today, the day after Christmas. Hopefully everybody had a great Christmas slash winter solstice slash Yule, Hanukkah. I mean, it's still going really for some people, and yeah, hopefully all that's been quite good. But let's get right to it. So today's video is back to Savage Kingdom stuff. As you may or may not know, I am very likely going forward with a 4th edition. I've already spoken about this before. I'm collaborating with Mad Scribe Games. The guy who runs it's a guy I've known for a while. We've kind of recontacted, and so yeah, I think it's going to be really cool. Meaning that I don't necessarily have to kickstart anything, although I might anyway in order to afford art and that sort of stuff. So basically, the deal with them is that I don't necessarily need any upfront money. The deal and the sales and stuff is already figured out. But in order to afford better artwork and stuff like that, we may have to do a Kickstart anyway. And it'd be kind of cool maybe to have some new T-shirts and stuff like that. So anyway, today's video is about the callings of Savage Kingdoms, 4th edition, and many of them are the same as previous editions. A call. So what is a calling, you might ask? So a calling is I guess the closest thing would be your class. This is not a class-based system, so that's why I don't call it a class. Besides, I like calling. I think that's a really cool name. This is a very hybrid system. So you choose your calling. In previous editions of Savage Kingdoms, you did not have to choose a calling. You just it was more there for as a guideline, and it was mostly for people coming from class-based systems, such as Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or something like that. So we still kind of have that, but it now has more mechanical benefits. So I'm pretty happy. 30 edition. Excuse me. Sorry, I did warn you up front. 3rd edition has some more mechanical value as well, but now 4th edition, I think I'm pretty happy with it so far with a playtest. So a calling is basically your class, your profession, your occupation, a calling, as it were. And you, when you build a character, you get 10 talent points for your calling to buy. It's how a favorite. If it's a favored talent, you pay 1 point less, just like you do with your race or culture, which I'll do in another video, maybe even the next one. Because I'm kind of going in order here of like maybe character creation stuff, and kind of the main defining thing about your characters is your calling. Well, probably it's race or culture, maybe even more so. But I wanted to start with calling because in other systems, class is like the be-all, end-all of everything. Yeah, so 10 talent points to start. You don't have. This is the cool thing about it not being an actual class system. You can spend those 10 talent points on other talents that aren't listed in the favored talent category for whatever calling is that you're looking at. So you're totally free to do that. However, we'll save some points if you buy stuff that's on the menu, so to speak, the list for a calling. I think there's like 25 talents in each calling, maybe 26, something like that. But and then whenever you advance, again, you don't if you can go back, and this is a thing that's not quite clear in the playtest rules that I need to correct. This will be all corrected before it gets obviously released to the final version, which will it'll probably be printed around March or April. So, but I got to work that out. So, yeah. So 10 points. And then what was the saying? Oh yeah, sorry, advancement is. We call it advancement. We don't call it leveling in the system. Level carries a different title, a different working mechanism in Savage Kingdoms. The only time we use the word level is skill levels. And that's on purpose because a lot of times when you have to qualify for a certain talent, it goes on your skill level, not your overall level or advancement in this case. So that is also a hybrid system of kind of a mix between a skill-based and level-based system. And again, that was a design choice. I wanted to try to bring the two together as much as possible. So yeah, if you advance, you get 5 talent points, 5 skill points, and you get a luck point every time you advance. Every other advancement is a +1 to renown as well. So if you buy a talent from your favored calling, because in other words, you can always go back to it, it saves you a point, or you can get a talent or two from a non-favorite one. So again, you have all this freedom to kind of stay within your kind of like focus, or completely go um, out of it. So all right, so here's the different callings. I think there's 22 of them. You think I would have counted ahead of time? I think there's 22 callings in the game system. And I'm just going to go through them pretty quickly and give you a synopsis about all of them. Most of them are going to make total sense, like what they are, obviously. There's also a random, there will be in the final published book, there's a random chart. You can actually roll, you totally roll or randomly roll up a character. This is also for GMs creating NPCs on the spot. So you take a 2d20 and roll, for example, let's say I rolled a 13, a healer is my, if I'm rolling randomly for calling healer. Okay, let's say I roll a 33, sorcerer. So, for example, so let's just go through the callings. So the first one, this is in alphabetical order, is alchemist. So alchemist is here, and I think maybe a couple of people with questions like, well, this is kind of an ancient world, Dark Ages kind of sword and sorcery setting. Alchemy seems kind of sciencey. Well, alchemy goes way back to alchemia or alchemia, as the Arabs were calling it, and Robert E. Howard stuff. There's a lot of strange sorcery-based alchemy. So that's why they exist. They're more of a very early form of alchemists, and not like the scientists that you would know. So we're keeping it all in theme. So the synopsis for the alchemist calling is dabblers in arcane elixirs, powders, and strange concoctions. Right. The next calling is assassin. Assassins are professional slayers, often working covertly and discreetly. So, and that's a good point. Like they're professional slayers. I know when I've when I was younger, I was playing D&D, and I also run a lot of D&D and Savage Kingdoms games for youth players. And their perception of assassin is just somebody that just kind of kills for no reason. But this is more of a like This is like you're just doing it's your job. It's not necessarily you take glee in it, but you could take the weakness of obsessed with violence or bloodletting or something like that. So you could build a like cold, steely-eyed professional assassin, or maybe just some weird over-the-top guy who just likes to kill people, or gal or whatever. So it's the beauty of fantasy. It can be fantasy storytelling. It can be whatever you want, right, within the context of the setting. All right. So the third calling is barbarian. So in previous editions of Savage Kingdoms, I called it berserker. And the reason why is because other people have had this debate through the years too. Barbarian doesn't really seem like a class, like going back to D&D, or a calling. Um, but Barbarian is closer to being a calling than a class, because class is almost more strictly occupational. So anyway, that's why they were berserkers in the past. However, not every barbarian is necessarily a berserker either. So I just went back to barbarian because it's kind of the classic Conan sort of archetype. And the synopsis on barbarian is primal warriors from barbaric cultures, including berserkers. So yeah, so they're not all berserkers, but many of them are. So yeah, and they have other cool things to do as a barbarian. You've got a lot of wilderness kind of skills and stuff like that. The fourth calling is corsair, also known as pirates, cutthroats, and outlaws of the sea. So yeah, corsair. I just like that term. It's a little bit more of an older, slightly exotic term than pirate. I mean, pirate's an old term as well, but I think when in people's minds when they think pirate, they think golden age of piracy, and Savage Kingdoms. If it's any kind of mirror to the real world history, it's more of a dark age. It's more 500-600 years before golden age of piracy, 700 years before, something like that. So yeah, Corsair, also known as pirates, cutthroats, and outlaws of the sea. Card is right. The next one is crafter. Originally, I called it craftsman, but I was trying to make it like gender friendly. So crafter But you could say craftsman or craftswoman or craftsfolk. But officially, it's crafter. Synopsis is the Smiths, writes and makers of the known world. Might reword that. Sounds like they're literally making the known world. But anyway, what it meant, I guess, what I meant to say is makers among the known world, or among the world, or among society. So there's Smiths, writes, and makers. So yes, you can play a crafter in this game because I know a lot of medieval fantasy or Dark Ages fantasy or Sword and Sorcery doesn't really have a crafter calling or class or whatever it is, but you can totally do that here if you want. All right, and the next calling we have gladiator. Gladiators are show fighters, those who fight for freedom or prize money. So right, yeah, I mean exactly what you would expect. And you can play a gladiator from a couple of cultures that are more traditionally what we think of gladiators and gladiatrixes. And excuse me, that would be the Laurentian Empire in this setting and the Praetorian Empire. But there are Praetorian Republic. But there are other cultures too, like even the more barbaric cultures that might have pit fighting and stuff like that. So it doesn't have to be like your typical gladiator with trident and net necessarily. It could also just be this brawler or this bruiser who fights for prize money and pit fights or something like that. So very cool. Let's see. The next one is healer. So that was one of my random rolls that I was making up on the spot. Healer is those who restore wellness, be it mundanely or via life magic. So pretty obvious. People that heal flesh for the most part, but you might could make a healer that's really good at psychology and to take care of the mind and spirits of others as well. And it says that you can be it mundanely or via life magic. So life magic is one of the 7 disciplines of the magical arts in the Savage Kingdom's world, and so that's probably, I guess, the clearer way, the more magical, mystical way of doing it, but rarer in the game setting, would be to take life magic. It's also more expensive because the life mage talent is like 8 points, um, which is fairly hefty, but it should be because magic or sorcery is supposed to be pretty rare in the setting, which it is. But you could totally build a healer, and I've seen several people do it during the last year and a half of playtesting, where they were just building an herbalist type healer or a leech. There's even a talent called Leechcraft, which is kind of fun. Um, so yeah, they could do a total mundane healer. There's a talent called Healer's Touch, where you can use your magnetism instead of intellect for your governing attribute and stuff like that, which kind of represents someone's bedside manner, right? Their kind of charismatic presence. Right, the next calling is Hunter. So again, these are alphabetical order. Hunter looks to be calling number 8. Is that correct? Yeah. Hunters are stealthy scouts and huntsmen who make their way in the wild. Stealthy scouts and huntsmen who make their way in the wild. So yeah, there's even a talent called Huntsman. And that one I did kind of keep. I mean, you could change it to Hunter Woman or Hunter Folk, but the reason I changed it to Huntsman, there's a talent called Huntsman because the calling is Hunter. So that's just I was trying to distinguish it too. Not a super big deal, but so so yeah, if your hunter is another equation to hunter would be ranger in like D&D, but less magical. Although you could definitely pick up a mage talent if you want to spend the points on it and you have the intellect and willpower for it. I think a good hunter magical type would be probably earth or water, or even life, or even shadow. So disciplines of magic. So those are your hunters, also known as scouts and huntsmen and rangers. All right, so the next one, number 9, calling number 9 is knight. So knights are armored and often mounted warriors of some influence. So pretty much as anybody would assume. Um, and yes, there are probably questions. This is more of a Dark Ages setting, and so knighthood wasn't quite. It kind of was, but not the way we think it was. The word knight's based on knicht, and knicht or knicht was an Anglo-Saxon term, or actually a Norman term, brought into England during the invasion, and that basically meant first son. And the first son was generally like took up arms, right? Especially if his father was like noble or ennobled or had any kind of position. Um, and the first son would often serve as like a squire, as we would later call a squire, an apprentice warrior, basically. And so that's kind of where the word comes from. It goes back really into the Dark Ages um, more than people think. It's just the idea of the heavily armored knight and the chivalry and all that stuff was a little bit later on, but the very basic idea of knighthood is pretty old. Goes to the Dark Ages, and that's what we're doing here. It's more of knights are a little grittier here, almost like Game of Thrones knights. So there's several orders that are kind of chivalric. You know, the knights they're trying to hold up themselves up to a higher standard or whatever, literally in some cases. But because they do have like some privilege, you know, some will get kind of corrupt and kind of end up doing what they want, that sort of thing. So another way to look at a knight would be if you just want to play like a heavily armored warrior who's typically mounted. It doesn't even have to necessarily be someone that's oath bound to someone, which is typically what it means to serve in military service. All right, the next I think this is calling number 10. If I were random rolling for it, it would be 18 to 19 on the 2d20. This is merchant. So yeah, just kind of like crafter, there's a merchant class or calling in this in Savage Kingdoms 4, and actually in the last couple editions of Savage Kingdom. So if you want to play a merchant, because I actually find that personally, I actually find that fascinating. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't, but it's there for people who do, and that this calling represents the traders and caravan masters of the world. Representing the traders and caravan masters of the world. Yes, it goes. So, yeah, that pretty much says it all. Another name for the calling would be trader. I know, well, literally says traders and caravan. So, merchant is a pretty old word. I don't know if it's as old as the word trader, but it doesn't really matter. So, if you want to play a character that has like really good at appraising goods and like navigation abilities or sail, you know, to navigate and make all these trade routes, follow these trade routes, or perhaps even trailblaze their own trade routes. That'd be kind of fun. All right, the next one, if I was rolling randomly on 2d20, only a 20 comes up, so only a 2.5% chance. Actually, I think it's a little different than that because it's a bell curve. Anyway, and this is a noble, as it should be. So noble is a calling. So again, this is another kind of calling or class that you wouldn't see in a lot of other systems. So you can literally play a noble, an aristocratic socialite, an occasional war leader. So again, it's important to note that yes, there were Dark Ages and ancient world nobles that were very decadent and kind of sat on their butts and drank wine and all this stuff and spent everybody's money and had slaves do stuff for them. There is that, but a lot of them were part of a kind of particularly in the warrior society, they were kind of war leaders as well. So they did have obligations. Their lives weren't quite as comfy as we might assume. They did do have to do stuff like go to war, lead armies into war, and raise armies and stuff like that. So yeah, and it's also you can play a character that is not the noble calling, but you can take the highborn talent. Meaning that, let's say, oh, I want to be a soldier. I just happen to have the highborn. So I was born into a higher family, but I'm not really following the path or the calling of noble. So you can totally do that as well. Very cool. The next one is nomad. So nomads are traveling herdsmen and hunters of the deserts or steppes. And they are mostly from the east, the eastern continent, or maybe even the southern continent of Amanju, but the eastern continent particularly, Hassan. But there are a few semi-nomadic cultures in Astagonia, which is the kind of western continent of the setting as well. So, yeah, that's right. But coming immediately to mind is like the Sea of Sand in Zaramad, which is where there was a lot of desert tribes there that are nomadic. Up in the north of that continent is the Yun hordes, or the Yuntilan hordes, or Yuntilan steppes. And there's a bunch of Mongolian type people. That's kind of what they're vaguely uh, uh, mirrored upon. So, so that's kind of where most of your nomads are coming from. But it does say in the write up for the calling of nomad. Also, it's a if you want to play a gypsy type of character, nomad is also the way to do it. In fact, there's actually a talent called gypsy and a talent called nomad. So you could take one of those talents without taking the calling of nomad and still have a little bit of that. But if you want to be more strictly nomadic or gypsy like, maybe choose the nomad calling. All right. Next one is priest. and this comes up on a 24 to 25 on the 2d20 random roll. Priests are servants of the temples and counselors of the local populace. So they are a servant of the temples, and in this setting, most temples are dedicated to a particular god, but there's a few uh, that are that are dedicated to an entire pantheon. Because in the real world, apparently that did happen occasionally, but I think it was somewhat rare. But we've seemed to have been uncovering more and more proof of that in recent years of archaeology. So some of the temples and counselors, local populace. So I think that's important too, because I think a lot of times in like D&D and stuff, people are playing clerics or basically a priest. They're channeling all this power from the gods and stuff, and I think a lot of times it doesn't get role played their position within their social position as well, which is counseling the local populace with healing them and advice and naming their children in like ceremonies and burying the dead in ceremonies or putting them on a funeral pyre or something like that. So there's priest is always one of my favorite kind of calling type or classes because there's so much you can do with them. And I feel like in tabletop role playing games they often get overlooked, sadly. Moving on to the next one, only showing up on a 26 if you're rolling randomly is Sage. So there is a Sage calling. Wise folk embodying, wise folk embodying with knowledge comes power. That I put in quotes. So yeah, they're basically meaning that yeah, knowledge is power. So and that's kind of what sages deal. They're very very smart, very wise. They've studied a particular subject or two or maybe three of the or maybe even in a broader sense. There's a talent called Lore Master that kind of helps express Sage. That's going to be it'll be in the favorite talents listing, of course. A few other talents that might Gift of Tongues would be good for a Sage. The Grimoire, if you want him to be a spellcasting Sage, Grimoire would be cool because Grimoire is a big giant book with like extra spell or two inside of it, and also has you get a bonus on alchemy and stuff like that. But so yeah, quite cool. That's the Sage. The next one is so that's kind of a rare calling in most other game systems. And here's another one, Seer. Oh well, this might come up a little bit more often in other TTRPGs. So Seer is oracles or soothsayers often granted with second sight. So uppercase S, uppercase S, meaning second sight or other sight. So someone who's gifted with a particular gift of seercraft. And there's actually a talent called Seer. I think I'm going to change it actually because it's a little confusing with the and call it Seercraft. Or I might go back to it used to be called Second Sight in previous editions, which I kind of like too. But that was almost more of a sort of an Irish setting. So I was trying to similar to Irish it was. So I'm trying to make it a little bit more maybe generic. So sorry guys, gals and whoever about the coughing. The next one is Shaman. So, shamans, what makes priests and shamans different, you might ask? Shamans are priests and god speakers of more primal and savage folk. So they speak to and for the gods, interpret the omens and signs from the gods. And they do not, the biggest difference between a shaman and a priest is basically look at it like this. A shaman is a barbarian priest. This is very simplistic, but it works. And a priest is a civilized priest, like a civilized clergy person that's more attached to a temple and an order that has more a very dedicated schedule about who's scheduled to be working at the temple. Because not all, in fact, most priests didn't really live there. I know we typically have that in adventures and tabletop role playing games. Many were just part time. Some were just lay priests. They weren't even officially anointed. But anyway, back to shaman. So shaman is it's kind of less organized. Although you can take druidic order as you can be a shaman and take the elite affiliation or elite order uh, called called the druidic order, and so they're like semi-organized, right? The druids of the old gods of the west. They're mostly found in the western part of Astagonia. Um, so yeah, so you could play a shaman that's more part of that order, or it can be more like most of them, more kind of wild and um, spirit speakers and occasionally healers and omen readers and stuff like that. All right, the next one is this comes up 3%. Well, not 3%, but 30 through 32 on the 2d20 is a soldier, because it's a somewhat common character type if you're in a semi kind of violent society. So soldier is self-explanatory. I guess the closest thing would be fighter in D&D or Pathfinder. They're well-trained warriors and guards of civilized realms. So this is another one that's kind of the difference between civilized and barbarian. So if you want to play a kind of a more wilder, not really trained, more intuitive warrior type, that'd be barbarian. If you want to play a more trained, probably better equipped, then soldier would be the one. And yeah, in the world, the soldiers are represented by literal standing armies, like the Laurentian Empire has the Legionary, right? And a few other kingdoms have a standing army of sorts. Most of them have to muster their warriors to them. So soldiers would represent someone who's like, for the most part, a full time, or at least somebody who's a part time fighter that's like, really dedicated to it and practices a lot. So yeah. All right, the next one is sorcerer. Sorcerers come up 33 to 34 if it's a random roll. They are students of the arcane and esoteric, workers of sorcery craft. Students of the arcane and esoteric, workers of sorcery craft. So, and just to clarify this one, because sorcerer in D&D means something a little bit different. It's someone who has innate magic, based on charisma, like inner powers, which is all well and good. But I'm taking a little bit more traditional stance on sorcerer here, which that's not really the case. It's kind of how D&D does it. Whereas I'm taking the more approach that you see more in sort of classic pulp sword and sorcery, where it's someone who dabbles in like almost dark arts, not necessarily evil. No one's evil and dark are not necessarily the same thing, but just kind of best way I've explained sorcery before as well is like it's almost like shortcut magic. It's like when somebody that doesn't have a mystical bloodline is trying to work some kind of magical effect, you have to kind of almost cut corners and use like weird components, and it doesn't always work all the time. And so that's sorcery. So that is typically what a sorcerer is. Yeah, and someone who's kind of dedicated their lives to that. And there are 7 disciplines of the magical arts, or 7 types of sorcery in the Savage Kingdoms. They're very broad types, so there's a lot of little subcategories in there. But the next calling is thief. So thieves are outlaws, street rats, and professional burglars and brigands. So as you know, and I'll comment on this one too. Like sometimes when people play assassins, like I said earlier, they're just kind of there to kill. And this is the same with thieves. Thieves don't always have to be kleptomaniacs that are just like, I must steal for no apparent reason. You could do that, but some of them are professional burglars. Again, I'll harken back to Robert E. Howard and his awesome Conan stories, but there were thieves in Zamora and other places that were literally hired for a special skill, like abductors or burglars or brigands or highwaymen. And that's kind of how they made their, I'm not just still illicit and dishonorable, right? But that's kind of how they made their living. They just didn't typically steal for like no apparent reason. But again, you can do that if you want. All right, the next calling, and we just have 2 left, is one comes up on a 38 because this is another rare one. This is warrior monk. So warrior monks are contemplative martial artists, typically from the East. So it's kind of what you would think of just monk. The reason I qualified as warrior monk is for 2 reasons. Warrior monk, I think, it kind of expresses better the type of monk, because not all monks are kind of warrior um, monks necessarily. Many of them, in fact, are just way off in hidden monasteries in order to escape violence and stuff like that. But others will, they have time to train, and they'll reflect, and they'll train in this kind of like, as we know, into more almost like traditional Eastern martial arts. But yeah, so that's the warrior monk, if you want to play that type of person. And there's some cool talents that um, support that, like mystic trance and meditative trance, and there's even a martial arts talent. You can follow different paths: path of the scorpion, path of the Swan, Path of the Dragon. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. And the last one only shows up in a 39 to 40 if you're rolling randomly. That is Witch. So witches are also called warlocks. That's kind of the male version. And they're rural magic wielders and herbalists. So they're kind of what you think is a witch. I know there's witch as in the sense of like a Wiccan priestess. You can definitely kind of base it on that too. But here is a more of a general take. It's more of a rural. Well, I literally just said it in the rural magic wielder and herbalist. So living off the land, the witches will often live kind of away from everybody or maybe at the edge of the village, or maybe they live in the middle, but they're kind of secluded or something. And they're really into herb craft and sort of natural magic and almost like folk magic. So, and we're taking the lore where a male witch is called a warlock. So, but again, not that big a deal. I mean, males will go by witch as well. So, anyway, that's it. That's the end of the video. You survived. Hopefully, you've made it this far. Congratulations, because I looked at the analytics of most of these videos, and not many people make it to the end. So, congratulations. I wish I had a greater prize than my ugly mug. But thanks for paying attention. I'll do a couple more of these videos soon, outlining more aspects of the Savage Kingdoms game system. Maybe the next one will probably be race/culture, and we'll do the 3-action system and all kinds of cool stuff to kind of lead up to the new edition of the game that'll hopefully be coming out in April. So, all right. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Thanks for hanging in this long, and I will talk to you guys again soon.